We're going to call our meeting to order at 7:05. I apologize for being late, but we had a little technical glitch to make certain we had our microphones working. Thank you, David, for squaring that away.
Yes.
And I will have a roll call. Lewis?
Here.
Virginia?
Here.
Crystal?
Here.
And then Pete?
Present.
Chuck Bonacci's here. I don't see Mike, James, or Jen. So we'll make a motion after that. We don't actually have minutes that are written to approve. I guess we could waive number 2. Bad job out of us. Probably me. But do we have a presentation for our stormwater plan from Patrick?
Did you guys hear something? Is that outside?
I think it might be my kids on there.
Okay. I'm like, I hear right now. Like a video going.
Yeah. So Patrick's joining us.
Sorry, I'd rather be listening to that. It's okay.
Patrick's joining us for a kind of a recap on our stormwater plan. That's part of the city going independent from the district, right?
So last month I came and gave you guys a short, brief presentation on the updates that we made to our stormwater management plan for the city. That is due with our annual report that's due to the Ohio EPA coming up next month. So presented it to you guys. I haven't received any comments from you guys at the moment, but if you guys do have any, if you can get them to me here shortly, we'll try and incorporate them into the plan. If you don't have any comments, then great, we'll go ahead and get it submitted here. In terms of public comments, we did publish the draft of the report on our city website to open up to the public for any comments. We did receive one list of comments here from Mr. Clark, who is actually here to speak with you guys here tonight once we get to public comment. But he had a list of about 20 comments here, and it's up to you guys if you want to hear.
I think it would be nice to hear them because
if you want to hear all of them, or if you want to hear the ones that resulted in changes to the plan that we put together, and then some of the other ones were kind of more clarification stuff that we'll provide in a response letter here to Mr. Clark. But
okay.
There's about 20 of them. If you guys want me to go through all of them, I can. Or I think there was probably about 5 or 6 of them that resulted in changes to the plan.
Go through the ones that relate to the change because
Okay.
I have some questions about the plan myself. So.
Okay. Okay, so one of Mr. Clark's comments here was discussing why the plan provided a focus on E. coli and total phosphorus. Also getting into questions of the baseline condition of those nutrients in our watershed, the goal and some of the details of measuring and reporting the levels of those contaminants within the watershed. So in the stormwater management plan report that we put together, I did provide a little bit of a larger explanation at the forefront of the document, explaining that although our stormwater plan does seek to address all of the pollutants that we identify in the watershed, the E. coli and total phosphorus are 2 contaminants that are a priority concern. Phosphorus and E. coli. Fecal coliform. So those are a priority based on a TMDL study that was done by the Ohio EPA. I want to say about 10 years ago was when they put that together. TMDL stands for total maximum daily load. What that was an assessment of what is causing in this case, the Middle Cuyahoga River to be impaired, and what are the priority contaminants that they need to address in order to bring the watershed into attainment of water quality standards. And so for the Middle Cuyahoga River, E. coli and total phosphorus are what they identified as the priority contaminants. So in this most recent round of permitting from the Ohio EPA, they required that municipalities take into consideration the TMDL study and what priority contaminants need to be addressed within the watershed. In terms of baseline condition, present levels of those contaminants within the watershed, that TMDL study did at the time have a lot of monitoring data that went along with it, and has some good baseline conditions in it. I believe EPA does a number of rounds of additional sampling each year as well. I'm not sure what the most recent data that they have on those parameters in the Middle Cuyahoga River watershed are, but the Ohio EPA would have some information on that. See, another comment that we addressed here was on page 32 of the document, we had some goals that the city was going to address. I believe that those goals referred to cleaning out catch basins and maintenance on the sanitary sewer. And the document called out that we would periodically do maintenance on these. In the document, we tried to give a more specific time frame of what periodically was referring to. We had a comment regarding the spill prevention plan for our city facilities and addressing the size of spills and the methodology for preventing spills from getting into storm drains. So we provided a little bit of more information on the size of spill and the method for cleaning up the spill, and also clarified the method of plugging and covering the catch basin drains if you're in proximity to that during a spill. You had a comment here regarding the checklists that we use for doing the inspections of the city facilities. So the city facilities, there was an inspection sheet that did get left off of the appendices of the document that we provided to you guys. So that's our wet weather and dry weather screening checklists that we use for inspecting our city facilities. Those were added into the document. There's also a comment regarding the number of abbreviations that were within the document, and trying to provide a clearer method of conveying to everybody what all of the abbreviations meant. So at the beginning of the document, we did add a table of abbreviations that could be referred to as you're going through the document to let you know what TMDL or whatnot means. There was also some grammar mistakes here that were pointed out in the document that we addressed. So the rest of the comments here, I've got a response and a comment letter here that we'll provide to them that kind of explains some of the info in the report that didn't result in a change to the document here. And I'm sure he'll probably have a few more comments to add to when addressing you guys here with his thoughts on the plan. Chuck, I think you said you had some additional questions or concerns?
Yeah, not specific to this plan, but just so I understand what's happening. This is to get us on our own stormwater management system. And I know from other communities that as they were developed, they didn't have like requirements for downspouts to be tied into certain things. And then it was an incredible cost to the homeowners that didn't have that. is the city in a good position to have those kind of things already taken care of and connected before we go out on our own and not be part of a larger water district? Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask?
I think so. So there's a couple different issues there with, one, making sure that the proper downspouts coming from a house are tied into the proper sewer. Anything that's stormwater or clean water, we want to make sure is going into the stormwater system. Anything that's picking up something that's possibly contaminated from within the household, your sinks, your toilets, your showers, your whatnot, trying to make sure that all of that's properly tied into the sanitary sewer, not getting into our storm sewer. So as luckily the majority of the development in Twinsburg is fairly recent. We don't have a lot of terribly old housing structure. There certainly is that in the city, but most of it's fairly new. So most of that has been inspected in recent years.
Okay.
And as stormwater and sewer projects are done, anything that's identified is brought to the homeowner's attention to be corrected. In terms of tying your downspouts into a sanitary sewer or letting it go out on the ground, I think that might be another kind of aspect of the issue that you were talking about there. And that's something that our ordinance does not specifically say that has to be done one way or the other. If it's brought out to directly piped out to a storm sewer, the benefit that you have there is that you're not dumping all that water out on your yard or your neighbor's yard or something like that that could be causing ponding issues. But then the reverse side of that is if you do dump it out on the ground and let it run down towards the road, then you're providing some infiltration into the ground with the water coming off of your roofs and whatnot, so that we're not causing as much flooding downstream at the ends of pipes. So the city doesn't specifically call out in their ordinances that it has to be done one way or the other. It's kind of on a case-by-case basis. We can make recommendations to residents of what would be best in their situation.
Should that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. I have friends that lived in other cities and were hit with huge assessments, and
Okay.
that's why I was concerned. So we have it that
We do have pretty modern infrastructure,
It has to do with the
and
age
I
of the
don't think that we're
community,
looking at any projects in the near future here that would require large assessments to residents. Our city infrastructure is in pretty good shape, and most of that's funded out of the general fund.
Right. So then the second question that I had related to standing water, is that addressed in the stormwater plan, or is that just a different beast altogether?
There's not a lot in this plan that would specifically address standing water. This plan is put together to address the operations on city property and things that the city has control over. Mostly our municipal sites that we have throughout the city. It does get some into where we have authority to issue permits for construction sites and those kinds of things to make sure that the plans that they're putting together aren't going to harm downstream properties. So no, this plan does not call out a lot for
Okay.
standing water. It's more into water quantity or water quality issues as opposed to water quantity issues.
Okay.
Okay, Rick, I have a question.
Yep.
So, can you rephrase about what you just said about water infiltrate from downspouts to other people's private property?
Yeah. So if you have water running off of a property, if you want to take a residential property, for instance, coming off your roofs, your driveways, you're coming out the downspouts. Sometimes those are connected directly into a storm sewer main that runs out at the road, and it would be piped from your downspout connection underneath the ground, connecting into the pipe there. And the benefit to that would be that you're not dumping all that water on your property and your neighbor's property, and possibly causing issues with standing water or ponding or flooding problems. So there's a benefit to that. The other benefit on the other side, the other thing that you can do with your downspouts is just have them coming out onto the grass, ideally at least 10, 15 feet away from the foundation of your property, so you're not dumping all that water right at your foundation, and ideally at least another 10 to 15 feet away from your neighbor's property line, so you're not just shooting all your water off onto your neighbor's property. But if you're letting it go out on the grass there, then that water is able to soak into the ground and provide recharge to the groundwater aquifer. Get some groundwater recharge coming back into the system. So there's kind of benefits to either way, and the best thing to do in any individual situation kind of depends on the soils that you have at your site, if they're able to infiltrate water, or if they're clay or rock or something like that, and the water isn't really soaking into the ground at any appreciable rate and is just causing ponding and flooding problems for you and your neighbors.
So if that's occurring, what recourse should our citizens have to address that?
I believe that it's stated in the ordinance somewhere. I couldn't pull out the specific section for you, that you're not allowed to cause I'm trying to think of the word here, but a nuisance to your neighbor, changing the course of natural flow so as to cause a nuisance to a neighboring property. So that's something that the city would be able to work with a resident on, trying to remedy a dispute between neighbors in that sense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
If there's no other questions from you guys, then I'll let you move on with your meeting here.
I don't think so. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks.
Thanks for the work that you put into this project too, because I've attempted to read your document at one time and I can't.
Yeah.
So it takes like,
Thanks a few sittings.
yeah.
Good work.
Thanks.
Okay. Audience participation. Do we have?
Yeah,
Yeah,
mask on or off?
it's up to you.
I'm fully vaxxed, so
It's not required in the building.
want to make sure I'm not mumbling and everybody can hear me. So, give you a little bit of background, and I started my career back in the 70s.
If you could.
Oh, my name
Yeah.
is Lynn Clark. I live on Old Mill Road. So I started just down the street here a little bit at EPA back in the 70s, and have been a registered professional engineer since about 76, 77. So it's kind of scary when I try to count up almost 50 years as a registered professional engineer. Most of the first part of my career, 25 or so years, was all related to environmental and some health and safety thrown in on top of that. Most of that environmental was very specific, related to ground and surface water pollution. Have advanced studies in hydrogeology, and as after my term at EPA, I worked for industry. Most of that term at industry was at Leaseway Transportation. We had facilities across the country, and I was the director of environmental affairs as the stormwater runoff regulations were being promulgated. The first industry that it affected was transportation. So spent a lot of time back in the mid to late 90s going back and forth to Washington, talking to all my peers. Hey, what data are you getting? Talking to the US EPA. So have a little prism to look through that when I look at what the city has planned. Perhaps you'll consider that in my
So it
comments.
sounds like you're an expert.
I don't want to brag, right? That'd be wrong. But I do believe I have some value to add to the conversation. Now, the other part of my career was all spent in process improvement. and going into different factories, different companies, different organizations, and figuring out how they could do it more, better, faster. So it's an interesting combination, a lot of overlap. So one of the first things that caught my eye as I looked at the report, and I'm not going to repeat everything Mr. Jeffries just had, but the importance of having metrics. And I know the city's been working on establishing metrics for a lot of their key departments. And having those up front, present, visible, so everybody can see, here's our goal. This is how much we have to do every day to satisfy whatever the requirement is. Back in the Marines is how many push-ups you're going to do today. Now, some of you may relate to that, some of you may not. But having that metric, having it visible, having a dashboard that everybody can see and know, okay, we've done all of this stuff. The plan talks about having public outreach meetings and handing out brochures, and we're going to count the number of brochures. Maybe that's super effective, or maybe it's a waste of time. But without those metrics, you won't know. So what's the baseline condition? What's the goal? How do we get it out, get it visible? Second key point is public outreach. We've got to be able to see, and I'm speaking now of everybody in this community, has to be able to see what's going on. And I'm especially getting a big dose of this right now because of the Scanal developments on our street seem to be in a cloud of mystery. And I have reached out, I've submitted requests for viewing information, and getting the feeling I'm being stonewalled. Oh, yeah, we got your thing, we're reviewing it. Well, when can I come? When can I come? Crickets. And that's not true just here at the city, but I got pushed back for a long time from the Summit Soil and Water Conservation District. Ohio EPA was moderately better. They have some documents posted on a searchable website. But if you want to have transparency, if you want the people to appreciate the hard work the committee and the rest of the city's doing, you've got to have it immediately available so there's no confusion. We talked a little bit about specific contaminants. I got a little education from my fellow engineer here about, yeah, we're not looking just at the two big ones of E. coli and phosphorus, but we're also looking at everything else that's typically associated with stormwater runoff, which when we were running the program for the trucking company, we monitored all of those things. Now, we monitored them with very specific plans for every site we had, and we had about 100 sites across the country. Each one had a detailed drawing that showed, here's the pathways, here's all the storm sewers, here's where we're going to monitor, here's the frequency that we're going to monitor, here's the very specific training all the people are going to go through, here's the qualifications of the people that are going to do that training, here is what is expected each person to do to satisfy their role to meet this goal. And let me just put this in context too. The CEO at that company said, Lynn, this is real simple. Our company is going to comply morally and ethically with all the environmental rules. Very clear. So we went at least to the extent that we said, this is what the rule book says, but if it wasn't meeting the rest of the criteria established by the CEO, we did a little bit extra. And that's not just to brag on that company, but the big thing there was it was site specific. We had drawings. We built upon what we had learned with many other programs. And we stored a lot of fuel at those trucking sites, as you might imagine. There is a regulation, the spill prevention control, some control and contingency. And that very specifically lays out, here's a whole bunch of information that should be in your plan for managing petroleum spills. We built on that to build our SPCC plans. So having a few words in there is not near going to be as effective as show me the drawings. Hey, I've got a wastewater treatment plant out here. It's got its set of things. I've got maintenance facilities, I think more than one around the town. Each one has a different characteristics. To hear, oh, I'm going to cover the salt pile. How big's the salt pile? Where is it located? Do I need to be concerned about that? Et cetera, et cetera. And I could go on, but I think you've heard the message. There's a theme in there that has been fairly common in a lot of the literature, and it's we're going to encourage as much stormwater as we can to infiltrate the ground. That, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeffrey, that's one of the tenets in the overall plan.
With proper treatment based on the plumes that are expected from the facility.
Yeah, so my question for the board, and this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek, right? Would you drink any stormwater coming off of any parking lot? Nobody's volunteering to do that, right? Now, at least I didn't see any volunteers. You know, we got a little bit of precipitation out there.
There was a time where I probably would have.
I know I would have as well, and my dad advised me against that on one occasion.
Have a little bit of ethylene glycol in there, which you would not.
Well, that's not the only thing either. Yeah, but it's a good start, right? So a lot of Twinsburg, particularly Old Mill Road where I happen to live, we're on wells. And those wells rely upon the recharge of the groundwater table, and that comes from stormwater. And it could come from stormwater infiltration that brings all those things along. Now, just to share just a little bit of what's going on with Skinnell, there was a conversation with Ohio EPA and I last year, and Ohio EPA said, yes, we recognize that as a risk for that Skinnell property. And the risk is twofold. Those contaminants get into our groundwater, and then all of those of us that have individual wells are unable to have potable water, or they pave over everything and we don't have any recharge of the groundwater. So also a bad day. So the plans for the city should have a big warning against, hey, let's encourage infiltration. Encourage infiltration only where it's non-contaminated. And I don't know too many places that would be uncontaminated. Just, again, a little bit of observations, if you'll bear with me a little bit longer and cut me off. You know,
A few more minutes. If we give
okay,
you 2 more, is that fair?
Because I get wound up a little bit sometimes. Now, the program has been administered by the good folks down at the Soil and Water Conservation District, and they have been coming out doing periodic inspections. Now, earlier, Mr. Jeffers commented that, hey, if we've got stormwater going onto an adjacent property as a result of some activity, that's not right, if it's ponding. And in fact, with the site clearing, all they've done so far is just cut down a whole bunch of trees and let it lay fallow for a year. There's a huge pool in one of the neighbors' yards, right over their septic system. That is something that has been easily observed by anybody with a set of eyes and a pair of boots that can walk around. Now, the other thing, too, is they've had silt fences that were shown on their plans as, oh, this will keep all the silt out of the runoff. silt fences are in horrible condition and have been. So I'm glad, since the enforcement action so far is they've issued these punitive fines of $250 or some such thing per event. Big deal. Those guys spend that much on lunch every day. So, like the idea of closer, but these inspections have to be site-specific, just like the plans were. Hey, if I've got a different set of circumstances, I don't just put a cookie-cutter approach on it. That's why people like Mr. Jeffers and I went to engineering school, to get knowledgeable and to think and not use a cookbook. Anybody could do that. And kind of one last comment that didn't get mentioned before was, hey, we've got this corridor that gets a lot of salt. It's called I-480 that cuts through town. And I didn't see that addressed, nor did I see any of the industrial property addressed. And the individuals can only do so much. And I don't know if it's been studied, how it's been studied to see here's the pollutant loading coming from the commercial industrial side of the city versus the residential. Again, it's all about let's make sure the program fits the situation. Thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll see each other later.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Do we have any other audience participation? Daisy?
Good evening, Commissioners, Councilman Post. Daisy Walker, Council Ward 2. Yesterday, we interviewed 30, 40 applicants for the Environmental Commission, Capital Improvement, many commissions that we had. And in the Environmental Commission, I think we had possibly 4 that we interviewed, and they were really great with their speeches and the things that they have done for other municipalities. And I was impressed with Sandra Baines, and she's a sustainability specialist, and she'll give you a 5-minute run of the speech that she gave us yesterday, and you will certainly be impressed. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Daisy.
You're welcome.
She's souping me up a lot.
Maybe 20 minutes would be great.
Hello, my name is Sandra Baines. I live on Hunters Ridge here in Twinsburg. I've been here for a little over a year. And I'm interested in being on the council because I have a master's degree in sustainability management, and I'd like to get involved in my community and do what I can to make things as sustainable as possible. And that's my story.
Awesome. Well,
Go ahead, I won't cut you off.
hopefully the interviews went well. It's exciting to see that we have 4 additional people that were interested. Unfortunately, I've heard that 2 of our existing members are not seeking reappointments, at least 2. I think the appointment process is up to the hands of council. Am I right, David?
Right.
So.
Yes. Well, we interviewed quite a few people yesterday. What I can tell you is that the people that were looking specific for the Environmental Commission have excellent backgrounds. They weren't just, it really wasn't just, I want to do a little recycling. I mean, they come with knowledge, experience, degrees, work experience. I mean, their careers are sustainability, and it is, we were floored by the greatness of the candidates, and it's going to be a great addition to the Environmental Commission. Now, that's not to say it wasn't good. I don't know who was on here last year, honestly, but I can only tell you from the candidates coming in, they were excellent candidates. Excellent candidates. So,
Awesome.
we're very excited for that, as we are you.
Thank you. Anything else?
So council will be voting in the next meeting or 2?
I think we're going to do it the second meeting in March.
Okay.
Is what it's going to be. We pretty much went through it all last night. Put people where they needed to go, and I think it's going to be the second week of March. It will be forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you came today too to see what we do.
Daisy invited me,
I invited her, she impressed me, and I thought she was going to do a speech about what you told us yesterday.
What about what exactly?
And
Well, you know, that's
You're
okay.
fine. You're fine.
fine.
You're fine.
You're fine.
No.
and welcome to Twinsburg, because you're in one of our newer neighborhoods. So that's awesome that somebody in one of our newer neighborhoods is
Yeah.
attempting to get engaged and attempting to get appointed to something.
Last night was a complete breath of fresh air. I mean, all the candidates came in were just, it was incredible. For all, not just this commission, but all of them, It was great to see the participation from residents. It was great.
Awesome.
I want to, did you want to, I don't know if you wanted to address any of the comments or not, or I don't know if that's appropriate or not appropriate. I just didn't know. I thought you brought up some good points. I just didn't know, again, what is planning on being addressed, not planning on being addressed. I didn't know if it's something food for thought for you and Amy, or.
Yeah, the comments I addressed were what resulted in changes to the plan. I've got a number of responses to some of his comments, kind of explaining where things are and what the city is doing to take care of some of these issues. If you'd like responses to any of them, I'd be happy to offer them to you guys, or if you'd like to move on with me, I'm fine with that as well.
So I do have one dangerous question for Mr. Clark, if that's okay. And I live reckless at times. So right now we're under the Summit Soil and Water Storm Management Plan. And it sounded like there were elements of that you were not happy with.
Can you do me a favor though? Can you just come up to the mic so it can be recorded?
Yeah.
Yeah, that way it can be recorded.
And then,
Do a little
so
Q&A
like
here.
compare and contrast, like it sounded like there were response issues with construction near your house, that you weren't happy with the way
No,
Summit Soil and
yeah,
Water
so
responded.
My house has been there, my house was built 170 years ago.
I understand that, but there's new things happening around you. That you
Yeah.
mentioned the silt fence and pooling of water and the response that Summit Soil and Water had towards
Yeah,
it.
so Summit Soil and Water is supposed to go out every month and do an inspection. My frustration was they did inspections, but they didn't see everything. And I'm just an old farm boy, but I know if you want to see what's going on, you put on your boots, you go walk around, and you see what's going on. And these conditions had not changed, and you don't need to be real close. If you're within 10 feet, you can see a hole in the silt fence that's this big. And then, when they approved the plans, there's a swale that goes across this property. When it was fully wooded, it wasn't an issue. When you cut down all the trees, you change the coefficient of runoff. You change the amount of water that's now running off instead of being absorbed by the vegetation or percolating into the ground. It's sitting there in my neighbor's front yard. And not a good situation. So they periodically would issue a notice of violation to the developer. $250 fine.
When you say they,
The Soil and Water Conservation District, issued that notice of, I don't know if they ever collected that princely sum of a total of $750 or not. But under the Clean Water Act, you can have fines of $10,000, $20,000 a day, and it gets worse when it's knowing violation. And the landowner is also required, it says in their permit that they prepared, best management practices after every storm event, we're going to go inspect the property. They are out usually once or twice a month. Part of my frustration with the good folks at the Soil and Water Conservation District, it was hard to get any of the reports. It was even harder to get the reports that the consultants did on behalf of the developer. It's been hard to get what's going on in the city too. Did that respond, Chuck?
Yeah,
I-
so service that you're getting from the larger storm and water management entities not that good, and they're not necessarily following in your estimation of what they should be doing.
and
And
it's,
the company's not following their standard of what they promised during their construction process.
correct. And so all the neighbors have pretty jaundiced opinion of the direction this is going to go. And I always say, what if I lived there?
Right.
You know, that's how I've always looked at everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it sounds like enforcement is the issue? Like, so the fines that are being imposed are simply the cost of doing business that are, built in?
Yeah, it's not even worth,
Yeah.
again,
Okay.
used to work for $1 billion company.
Okay,
We didn't, told you,
yeah,
my CEO, he didn't even want to fine $200. That was not acceptable. But here, it's like you said,
yeah.
cost of doing business, go away, don't bother me. To have their inspector come out there, that's going to be more than $250.
Right.
And I have not had the opportunity. I just got the reports Monday from the Soil and Water Conservation District. I went down, went through all their files. So I don't know if their own inspector found deficiencies or not, but I can tell you for months, it's not been to design.
Okay.
And
One last question.
yes, ma'am.
What methods of stakeholder engagement do you think would work best? I think it's a growing conversation, not only in Twinsburg, but across the state and the region, about equitable stakeholder engagement. How do we talk to the public and engage our residents on these issues? And for some communities, it's like, send us an email. Others, we need a full community meeting. And so what do you think would work best?
I think it's not just one meeting, but a series.
Okay.
And again, it was painful back in my EPA days to show up at some of those meetings because we're talking about, we're going to put a landfill in next door to your property. And nobody wants that as a neighbor. And those meetings were contentious. Likewise, we've got sewage sludge coming out of Akron, or sometimes it's coming from Philadelphia. Not a very popular thing to spread on the field next door, etc. But when you can sit down face to face and the residents believe not only are my comments being heard, but just like Mr. Jeffers said tonight, hey, we're making amendments based on those. The biggest fear of my neighbors, as I've talked to them, is, it's a done deal. The city of Twinsburg only wants the tax revenues. We're out here, most of us are Twinsburg Township. They don't care. That's a sad comment. And when I moved, I've been living around Twinsburg ever since I moved here out of college, which was a day or two. But I've been in my house for over 35 years. I'm one of the short timers. There's a fellow across the street that's lived there for like 60 years. We got some people, they love the neighborhood, they like the quiet enjoyment, they like the clean water, they liked having their own wells. And at least if we can see the city follows their regulations, and the first thing it says is we're going to protect the health and safety of the community. Professional engineer, what's the first thing in your professional code of conduct, in your ethics?
Protect the public?
Protect the public, regardless of who signs your paycheck. And unfortunately, it doesn't always seem to be that way. So, again, do you have more questions, or I'll get off my soapbox, or I can stand here all night, you know? But I want to go home and see the president, and see what he's got to
Understood.
tell us.
So you mentioned transparency. After every actionable item we do, whether it's a document shredding event, whether it's an e-waste collection, whether it's a community cleanup, we report what the outcomes were, how many people we touched, what literature we handed out, how many tons of material were recycled or collected, how many trash bags were picked up on the side of the, you know, in a park or an area when we did the community cleanups. We report that to city council. It's sometimes picked up in the bulletin. So we attempt to do the things that you're saying for the parts that we have done with this commission. This stormwater plan is a relatively new one, but it's new thing. But it seems like most of the plan that they were asking us to do were the things that we've already done through our Earth Day celebration, through our other environmental related events, where we had those touch points of engagement.
Yeah,
So-
and
But I know we're not hitting everyone.
yeah.
So
And so if you don't have that transparency and a good dashboard, so you can go to the My Twinsburg and go to the Environmental Commission and you can say, hey, this big problem that we face is in our stormwater runoff is E. coli, total phosphorus, oil and grease, total suspended solids, yada, yada, yada. How are we doing? Are we moving the needle? There's a visual dashboard. Again, every factory that I went into, from the first day, the biggest metric was how many hours has it been since your last lost time injury?
Yep.
When you work for a chemical company like I did, that was the big thing. And it would be in the millions of man hours. Huge. Same thing here.
right.
Hey, we do all of these things, and everybody wants to know. Hey, I collected all this trash. I feel really good about it. I met all of these people. At the end of the day, are we going to be discharging cleaner water from the city?
Okay.
So visual metrics is key. Otherwise, you don't know. Are we just playing a game, or if the Guardians are playing, if and when they start playing again, right? Without that scoreboard, we have no idea.
Yeah.
What's going
on? So that's a different topic for a different.
Yes.
It's a different one for a different day. But thank you, Mr. Clark, and you have our ears.
Okay.
So-
And again, I'd be glad to come in, and I'm retired, so I don't charge like I used to charge. Just some
Understood.
contribution to the community. I'd be glad to offer my advice, perspectives, some of the bumps and bruises I got along the way. So again, thank you for your time.
So do we have any commissioner reports? Start. Louis? Do you have anything to report? No. Okay. Virginia, do you have anything to report?
Yes, and I think you'll touch upon some of these
Okay.
things also. For Earth Week, last year I worked with Lynn Muter to kind of get the message out about the clean water starts at home will be this year's theme for, I believe it's Summit Soil and Water. So I'll work with her to get the message out through the Twinsburg Environmental Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to have a consistent message from all the different outlets that this information comes from. And also some things about recycling, reducing waste, backyard conservation, things like that, just more at the homeowner level that people can relate to on the smaller scale, again with the consistent message.
Awesome. Thank you for that. You're an excellent communicator. Crystal?
The only thing that I want to bring up is that I'm curious about the charge of the Environmental Commission and where our authority lies, because we're having a lot of conversations about really serious issues.
Yep.
But I'm not sure what our power is to really address these things, other than to listen. And then is it that we make recommendations, or is it that we facilitate conversations between the local government and residents? But I'd love for us, it doesn't have to be today, but I'd love for us to get clarity on where our authority lies in terms of providing remedies to some of the issues that we discuss here in this forum. Secondly, I'd like for us to be able to explore our authority, or at least involvement in conversations about new buildings that are happening in the community. And especially, I know I got an email as a parent with the Twinsburg schools having massive renovations that are in store in the coming years, in the first phase, and it outlines all of the things that'll be done. I'd love to hear presentations on the environmental lens that is being applied to new construction, to make sure that we are building with a mind and an eye towards stormwater management, and if we're engaging minority vendors. But I think that there's an intersection of a lot of the commissions that could be coming together, as I'm serving on the Environmental Commission and I'm serving on the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee for the city. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity for us to come together and really look at some of the things, the great things that are happening in our city, and weigh in on that.
So kind of like a commissioner's commission?
I'm not trying to create more meetings, but what I am saying is that I think that having an opportunity to react to some of the construction that's happening, and if we could be a conduit for increasing communication between government and community, I'd like for us to do that and be as useful as possible. I worry that in a lot of forums, not necessarily this one, there are meetings for the sake of meetings, and then people hear about it and then they walk away and nothing happens. And I want to make sure that we're really being a part of the change that we like to see locally.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Pete?
Well, just for the commission situational awareness, Twinsburg AYSO, that's our local youth soccer program. We'll be starting its second annual spring soccer season, weather permitting mid-April. So that just means more traffic, more trash to our local soccer fields. That's within the schools and the Parks and Rec. The Twinsburg AYSO is in the process of developing a communication plan with participants regarding the proper disposal of trash and things. I just wanted to bring that to the Environmental Commission for awareness. I believe the same thing could be said with TBL, Twinsburg Baseball League, which is starting to.
Okay. So within the last 2 or 3 months, I had a conversation with a resident about recycling and what's recyclable material and what's not recyclable material, and how to better communicate those kind of things with us. And I talked with service department and a counselor about that, and that was leading up to a recycling contract being renewed, I think is the right word. Right, David? Is that what happened? So what is happening is, with our next sewer bill, we will all residents that have a sewer bill come to them will get a update on what the recyclable materials are and what the process for the curbside recycling program is, and it hopefully will reduce some of the wrong material getting into the recycling stream that contaminates it and ends up in the landfill, thereby taking our good intentions and putting it right into the trash. So that's something that's awesome that's happening, that's going to happen in waste management. It's providing the materials. They're also going to be doing a mailer that'll be going out after the sewer bills. So we'll get 2 direct communications to residents about recycling program and what's acceptable. As far as our calendar of events and things coming up, for our Earth Day celebration, it's going to be more of a day of action, where it'll be a cleanup of the parks. In the past, we've done community cleanup days, and we've done roadways and some other areas in town, and quite frankly, it's scary to be on the side of the road. And we had a lot of kids show up. We had the football team and a lot of young people. And the last thing I want to do is to be associated, and I don't want the city to be associated with something tragic. So it's going to be focused on our parks and our open spaces. So if we're doing like a non-city property, it might be like the Metro Park and Ride area that has some debris that collects. Folks that are in parking lots sometimes drop stuff.
And what day is that?
That's going to be the 23rd. That'll be the Saturday after Earth Day. And we'll have some communication.
Times for that?
No, I don't have times worked out yet, David.
Okay.
You're catching me. Sorry.
No.
Then every 2 months, we're going to be doing something throughout the summer, basically, is what's going to happen. June 25th will be our document shredding day, and that's usually where we get about 6,000 to 10,000 pounds of material diverted from landfills, protecting residents' information, and getting documents shredded. And then it gives us another touch point to talk about whether it's water or rain gardens or some other issue that Lynn's going to help us get the materials for. We engage each of the residents with that comes through. These are items that are specifically targeted towards residents of our city. Then in August, we missed the cycle for the e-waste through Summit Reworks. They have a grant cycle, so the next available date will be a Saturday in August. The deal with that will be when we work with Reworks, they have the staff. So we'll do another engagement piece, count the cars that come through, get the totals of materials that were collected, and have another opportunity to have another piece of literature or more information go out to the residents, something related to environmental. And then we'll wrap up our season with another community cleanup in the fall. We've talked about bouncing them back and forth, doing them in the fall and in the spring. And usually what would happen is we'd get this idea that we were going to do a touchy-feely Earth Day where it was just like come to the park and hang out, learn some stuff. I think the direction of action in today's climate makes more sense than let's look at the same displays that we've had. And actionable items give people passion to be part of the community. And it gets folks involved, and that's where I think we're trying to go. And when they're involved and they get the piece of information, hopefully we're gonna get pushed to more QR codes, linked to electronic documents. So we're saying that is a little bit more electronic. Working with Ryan on that stuff to have it all kind of funnel in to what we're doing, what's available, and what our best practices are. Does that make sense? So that October one, I don't have the date for it, but we'll figure out that it'll be early to mid-October. That'll give us every 2 months we'll have something to touch residents with something that impacts the environment. I think that'll be a good calendar for us. Dave, do you have any council reports?
Well, it's funny, I had stuff in my iPad that last night after the meetings I put in my bag. I go today when I get here, I pull it out, and it's not there. So some of the notes I had, I'll just try to do off the top of my head. Well, one of the things last night that we talked about that at some of the interviews was that communication with residents is so important. Communication. And I love that you're putting that information in the sewer bill. Do you guys normally, only because I'm curious, do you guys normally do that? Put information in the sewer bill? Is that what you do?
In talking with Simone, it just was like an affordable way to get information to folks.
So I guess
and it hits the residents that actually get the curbside recycling, because a lot of the condos don't have the individual sewer bills.
Right.
And the condos and apartments have a different waste collection system. And to not confuse their system with our system, because there's maybe 4 total waste haulers in the city. When you look at the different entities that have private pickup versus the curbside program.
Gotcha. Because I think that would be great. I mean, if the bill goes out every quarter,
Yeah.
how great to have a one-page, a one-sheet blurb every quarter,
Mm-hmm.
right? If communication is the key, and that's such easy, effective communication, it'd be great if we put out something every quarter. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, like, I know every year, or every time we get new tenants in my houses, I always give them about 8 bullet points of how to reduce water every time. You know, choose this cycle on the washer, you know, use your dishwasher, don't wash dishes, right? You know, turn off the water when you brush your teeth. It's amazing how many people leave that on and don't think about it, right? It's amazing. But that can reduce your water by 25%. But if we did little blurbs like that every quarter, I think that would be great. And including, if you can firm up those dates sooner, you know, to maybe put those dates in one of those.
Right.
Because I think
The
there is
e-way-
stuff that goes on the website, but I think on the website, you gotta go looking for it, right? If you put it in the mail, right, you don't have to go looking for it, it's coming to you.
Well, Simone's our key to that. Simone in the service department, and she's a saint when it comes to this stuff.
So it might be nice if we could try to come up with specific dates for like the e-recycle in August.
Right.
And then mid-October, and then, you know, have that go out, you know, on the next one, something like that. I think that'd be great, but yeah, communication is one of the things I want to bring up. And I will, Crystal, I will try to find out the answer to your questions here. I wrote them all down. I would normally be typing here. I'm really hoping it wasn't stolen today at work, out of my bag, which would be crazy, but, so we're gonna,
Yeah, I want to add to it, if I can, regarding what Crystal had said.
I was hoping you said you knew where my iPad was.
No, I'm not saying that. I just want to let you know, Crystal, that the Environmental Commission, it's a chartered commission, which means that it's voted on and by the residents, so it'll never go away. And council, I think it was last year, we were thinking about updating the charter. And if we do, I feel, David, that the Environmental Commission should be one of the commissions that we do immediately, because you're doing so much greatness for the city of Twinsburg, and it does need to be updated. And one thing I found out when I was reading the charter for the Environmental Commissions many years ago, there really wasn't a mission statement as to what you guys do. I mean, if we ask the Environmental Commission, what do you do? I'll probably get 6 different answers, you know, but we need something from you guys, from the charter, and I'm just talking, David, but I'm gonna let you do the doing of this, because you know, we need to start upgrading all of the charter commissions. I don't know how many there are, but I do know that the Environmental Commission, it is voted on, and we do need to update that charter. There's a lot of things that we do. There's a lot of things you need to add on, because at that time, we didn't say we did cleanup. We worked with wastewater management. There was none of that included in that, because in its infancy stage, no one knew. When I got on the Environmental Commission, I asked, what do we do? What's our mission statement? You know what we did? We looked at all the old ordinances and resolutions, because they didn't have a plan. Now that you guys are here, you have a plan, we can update the charter with you. David will be, since he's in with the Environmental Commission, he could work with you on it to get it up to date. And David will probably mention at our next council meeting to get their approval, so we could all work on some commissions that need to be updated.
Thank you, Daisy. Do we have any new or unfinished business? No. I'll move to excuse our absent members, Mike, James, and Jennifer. Do we have a second? Anyone opposed to excusing the absent members? No one's opposed, so they're excused. And our next meeting will be April 5th at 7 p.m. in the council chambers. And I'll make it a motion to adjourn. Anyone want to second that one?
Second.
Crystal seconds. And no one's opposed, so we're adjourned at 8:10.